everybody. Welcome to the Author's Porch, where every good conversation starts. We are excited. We have Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Author's Porch, where every good conversation happens. I am quite excited. Tonight we have author Luna here on the porch, all the way from the UK, guys. How are you doing, Luna?
I'm good, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing wonderful, and I am so happy that you agreed to stay up till 1 a.m. to have a conversation with me. And I'm sorry that I have you up at 1 a.m., but I am blessed that you gave us the honor of deciding to stay up this late to talk to us.
Yeah, it's not something I could do every day, but for something at a special occasion like this, I can.
Yes, thank you so much. And the reason why I think that I am so excited to talk to you because this book, I read your book beforehand, the subject as well. We talked a little bit before the show. I think it's something that needs to be out there in the world. I think there is such a hole right now in the world missing this and missing what you have to share. So let me give you a quick introduction because I know what I'm talking about and what we talked about, but the rest of the viewers, yeah. So, guys, welcome Luna to the porch tonight. Luna is an author of fictional stories. However, they represent real life situations based on their own experiences in the LGBTQ community. Luna is also a poet and a performer in the UK. And the book series that we are going to talk about tonight is Beyond the Binary. And I read the first book in the book series, and I'll give you a little bit more about it after we actually get into a conversation here. But I would love you, Luna, to tell us more about yourself and more about your journey with this book series.
hmm Yes, so I am non-binary, which means my gender is neither male nor female. It's a completely separate gender, and that's the same as the protagonist of my book, Skylar. They're also non-binary. So I'm happy with either she, her, or they, them pronouns, whatever is easier for people. Um, it's been quite a long time. The process of writing this series, or at least thinking about it, because I had the idea about maybe 3 years ago or so. I had an idea of writing a series about a non-binary protagonist and their experiences in day-to-day life in various aspects of the LGBT plus community. But it took me a while to actually think of a plot. I thought, okay, that's the concept, but you can't just write a book about this character not doing anything, just being a character. You need something to actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
When I managed to devote full time to writing and publishing, I started developing plots for the first few books in the series. The first two of which are now written and published, and the third one I have recently finished the first draft of, and I've made available pre-order on Amazon. It's not quite available in its final form just yet, but will be soon. So in the introductory book that Christine has read, which is called How I Found Myself, it centers on Skylar's relationship with their two partners, Hugo and Dale. They're in a polyamorous relationship. So how they support each other, but particularly through Skylar's depression, which is a reflection of my own experience. I've suffered extensively with depression, and have got extensive support from the most important people in my life.
Yeah, so when I was reading this book, I could feel the depression in the book. And And it was, there's not a lot of books that I read where I can actually feel. They have to tell me what I'm supposed to feel, and I have to read the words to understand. But one thing that I found very, very interesting, um, I was reading it and I felt myself just kind of just going down into this book, and I was thinking of something. I was thinking this really sounds like an Edgar Allan Poe type of literary piece. And then later in the book, the character mentions Edgar Allan Poe, and I'm like, well, yeah, it was very much similar. How you can emote the words that the main character was saying. He was or they were emoting the very feelings of depression, and I could feel that coming from the book. So do you, when you were writing that, those, was it, even though it was the character in the book, was it your feelings that you were going through?
Absolutely. Not at the time, because I wasn't struggling as badly at the time of writing, but certainly it was pulled from previous experiences, when I've been feeling absolutely hopeless and useless, worthless, and like there's no point in doing anything. Um, and of course, I hasten to add that's definitely not the case for either myself or anyone listening.
Yeah.
Um, that there is hope and there is reason to carry on and keep trying. Um, but I certainly know how it feels to think that there's no hope and no point. And I am humbled that you likened it to the work of Edgar Allan Poe, um, even before that became relevant in the story, because part of the story is, like me, Skylar, the protagonist, is a poet and admires various 19th and 20th century poets such as Edgar Allan Poe. And partway during the story, they write a poem inspired by Poe's The Raven. Um, and so when you mentioned Poe just then, I thought that was in reference to the Raven-esque poem. But it was a nice surprise to hear that you actually thought of Poe before that poem even came up.
Yeah, because I was reading it and I was like, this is very, I don't want it to sound like a bad thing, but like melancholy, kind of just very emotive and very just down, kind of in a good way, in a good way, right? And I thought, what is this reminding me of? What is this reminding me of? I was just like, well, the only other thing that I could think of was Edgar Allan Poe. And I thought, well, maybe, maybe I need to go read some Poe to see if it's the same as that. And then when it was brought up later in the book, I was like, okay, well, I guess it was supposed to be. So there was a part in the book that I had to read 2 to 3 times because I'm not in the LGBTQ community. I've never dealt with gender identity issues. So there's a lot of things that I don't understand. And that's just because it's not something that has been in my world before. So I had to read one particular thing 2 to 3 times before it actually caught me. And it was a moment in the book, if you don't mind me sharing, this is one moment where the grandfather made a statement.
Mm.
And I thought it was a beautiful statement at first, where he said, well, he can't help what he can't, something about, he couldn't help the choose, he doesn't choose to be this way, or something like that.
Mm.
Um, and the main character was upset, and I thought, well, the grandfather has accepted him for being non-binary. I don't understand it. And then after about the third or fourth time, it hit me where the word choice.
Yeah, yeah, that's the key word. The grandfather is a character I love. He's partially inspired by my own grandfather, actually, who died just over a year ago, while I was planning this series, so he didn't get to see any of it published. But he was a wonderfully accepting man, but didn't always understand everything, which of course is completely understandable that he didn't understand everything at his age. So the grandfather in the book, as you say, completely accepts Skylar, but doesn't quite get their identity. So I think the quote is, Skylar may not be sure about what they want to be, but it's their choice. So Skylar says, thank you, Granddad, but that's not quite right, because it's not a choice about who I want to be, it's just who I am.
Yes. Yes. And it took me a little bit, and I didn't understand. And then when I read it like the third or fourth time and I saw the word choice, and I
Mm.
thought, I get it now. It's not a choice. Like, I didn't wake up being, a white lady with red hair and green eyes. I was born that way. And that's the same as you. You were born who you are. And I found that, and when it hit me really hard, because I thought, imagine, people thinking that everyone has a choice to be who they are. We don't, right? We are who we are because that's just how
Yeah, we
we.
have a choice to do what we want to do.
Yes.
Um, yeah, what you do with your life is important, and that is a choice.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, who you are is just who you are. No one has any control over that.
Yeah.
But you can embrace it.
So you're a poet and a
Hmm.
writer and a performer, and you write about the non-binary experience, being non-binary. And what made you write particularly about this versus just pure romance or thrillers or mystery or any other genre? Why did you pick this particular subject?
Well, firstly, I'm not especially interested in many genres like thriller or mystery. Um, I think I can read them, but I don't think I'd be very good at writing them. But I specifically wanted to write LGBT plus stories because that there is quite a lot of material like that out there, but not all of it is very accurate or sensitive. Um, in some works, you have an LGBT character who's played for laughs or is put in as a joke, or in some cases, the writer tries to portray them positively but makes a lot of unhelpful mistakes. So I wanted to create some content that shows the LGBT plus community in a positive light and portrays the characters accurately, and just follows them during their lives. Not even all the plot is LGBT related. A lot of it is, as we discussed earlier, about mental health and life at work and family life. Um, so that emphasizes, yeah, LGBT people. That's not the whole of what their life is. Like as you said, you're a white lady with red hair and green eyes, but that's not all you are.
Yeah.
Uh, you're also someone who works for the author's porch and um, likes I can't quite see what knickknacks you've got on the shelf back there, but likes to collect things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what a lot of people don't realize, is once you say I'm this, they think that's the only thing you are.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people get put into bubbles, and you forget that first and foremost, I'm a person,
Hmm.
and everything else, is just parts of me. And I'm so many parts of a whole. So I liked, there were some scenes in there at work with Skylar, and it was very interesting because there was parts where I laughed because I thought, oh honey, there was so many moments where I had some workmates that I was like, oh yes, I want them to leave me alone too. But there are those people who, when they learn about someone's, for lack of better words, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, someone's um, or sexual orientation, somebody's,
Identity.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sexual orientation is essentially the kind of people you like or fancy, like if you're gay or lesbian or straight or bi.
Yeah.
Or in Skylar's case, it's mostly about gender identity.
Okay. So when they
Hmm.
learned about his gender identity,
Their identity.
they
Skylar uses they them pronouns.
Okay, when
Mhm.
they learned, then it was like it became like their favorite new play toy,
Mm.
and I went to a course, and it was um, black women and white women learning how to talk together. And one of the things I learned in that course, and they were very blunt and very open about it, and the black women said, it is not our job to teach you as white women how to deal with us, how to be around us, how to, don't come up and ask us to be your teachers. And that reminded me, I was reminded of that course when I was reading this book, because there was a lot of moments where it was like everyone wanted to ask a million and one questions. And it was like, well, can I just be a human today? How about that?
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't want to come across the wrong way. I am open to being asked questions as long as people are polite and not intrusive. It can often help to first ask someone, "Are you happy to talk about this?" before asking specific questions about it. Um, but yeah, I think the character you're referring to mostly there is Sally, who is one of Skylar's colleagues. She's described by Skylar as a woman who can't seem to get enough of me, even long after I've had enough of her.
Yes, yes.
So
And
she tries her best to be supportive by overusing Skylar's name, trying her best to validate them, always going, "Hello, Skylar, how are you doing today, Skylar?" But she doesn't realize that Skylar doesn't really appreciate that kind of overemphasis.
yeah, and when I was reading the book, I think that I heard your voice, like the actual sounds of your voice when I was reading the book as well. And I lived in England for 3 years, so a lot of times when I'm reading books and I know the authors from the UK, I'll often read, and sometimes you can find little words that are different from the American English versus the UK English, and that will show me that it's more of a England English dialogue versus an American, yeah, British English dialogue versus an American English dialogue. And then the characters in my head will start having a British English voice versus an
I
American English.
really Yeah, I really admire that in you because I find that's a really rare trait for American readers to have because a lot of American readers simply don't know much British English. Or even if they do, they'll still read British characters with American accents. And I'm guilty of the opposite. If I'm reading an American book, I'll often read the characters with British accents simply because that's what I'm familiar with. But if they're written with a lot of American dialect and it's clear that they have a particular accent, then I'll probably start hearing the accent that's being implied. Like if there's a lot of y'all and hey fellers and stuff like that, I'll start incorporating that
Yes.
accent.
The only reason I can do that is because I was military for 20 years. So I traveled everywhere, and I lived in Gloucestershire for 3 years, and I absolutely loved it to the
How to
point
pronounce
where
Gloucestershire.
so when I came back, I couldn't even remember some of the American names. Like I was like, what is a lorry? What do we
Oh,
call it here in the States?
yeah,
And
or chips.
yeah,
There are quite a lot of overlapping words like that because we both have chips, but for you they're what we call crisps, and for us
yeah.
they're what you call fries.
Yes, yes. So, and then the boot, and I was like, oh, that's the trunk. And then I was like, where's the napkins? And they were like, what are napkins? And I was like, oh, the serviettes. And then I was like, the cutlery. I was like, where? That's the fork and the knife. So there were so many things that I had to learn. So now, and yeah, traveling gave me this huge sense. So when I read authors from all over the place, as long as the words are in English, because I did not learn other languages. I tried. I learned small little words in Japanese, small little words in Spanish, small little words in German and things, but not, I couldn't hold a conversation. As long as the words are in English, in my head, I will hear the accent of what the dialogue in the book is. And I love that because to me, makes the book more authentic for me. So let me ask you this: you've got 2 books already out and published. You've got 1 book on pre-order. How many books in the series altogether? Do you already know, or is it just coming to you?
No, I don't know yet. It's an ongoing series. I know I've got an idea for the plot of the next book, the 4th one,
Mhm,
but that's just in the basic stages at the moment. I need to expand on it before I start writing it properly. So these first 4 are all from Skylar's point of view, and the 5th one might be as well. But after that, I'm planning to write more books from different characters' points of view. So there'll be one probably written jointly by Skylar's 2 partners, Hugo and Dale,
mhm,
and some by some of Skylar's friends, or maybe their mom and their granddad,
mhm.
um, and perhaps later down the line, even some of the antagonists of the series.
Awesome. I love
Mm.
that. I had on another podcast that I
You
had
frozen?
Ellen Archer. She's an author, and I'm, am I still
Yeah, you're
present?
back now.
Okay, good. I had another author, and she writes MLM romance, and I loved her book. Like, I can't wait because she's going to be on the author's porch in a couple of weeks. But she writes from a place like you. She's in the LGBT plus community, and so she writes from a place of authenticity, like you, understanding the struggles that people go through because she was raised, um, it's against the church and you can't do this because the church says this and it's a sin and all this other stuff. And talking to her and hearing about the struggles that she had when she grew up, because she was not accepted by her family growing up and those type of things. Whereas you had a little bit of a different of experience. It seems like where your mom and or your granddad, at least that I know of, he tried his best. It seems to understand and learn. And
Mm.
but I find those books because I've read yours and I've read hers coming from authors who are in those demographics, for lack of better words, who understand the struggles because they've lived that life. They're not
Mm.
just writing about something or researching it and writing about it. Um, the struggles come through so real and so raw and so authentic, and you just I won't say that I relate all the way to it because I don't know what going through that is, but the depression that Skylar went through, I feel that because I suffer with depression, so I could just feel that sadness in his soul, not just in his, in his head or their head, but in their soul. And then
Mm.
the same thing with Ellen Archer's book when um, their characters were being oppressed and being told what you can or can't do. I've been there, and I felt that, and I was like, wow, like that is some very deep stuff. So I applaud you for tackling that because there isn't there's there's not books out there just in abundance like this. There's a million and one romance books. I mean, heck,
Mm.
I wrote a young adult one. I've got another romance coming out in May. I mean, they're a dime a dozen, right? But in this demographic, this genre right here, it's not out there. And there are millions and billions of people that are fighting every single day just to be who they are,
Yeah.
you know. So
Well, it really means a lot to me to have that praise from you, especially if the you as someone else who's experienced depression. Uh, it's assuring for me to know that someone else who's experienced depression can read my work and relate to it, and testify that it's accurate.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I do put a lot of thought into how I form my sentences, especially in the dramatic mental struggles like that.
Mhm.
Um, I take care to try and show rather than tell as much as I can. I don't just want to say I feel terrible or I collapse crying, because for one thing, that's boring, and for another, there are much more descriptive and immersive ways you can write it. You don't have to say I'm crying. You can describe how the emotion is building up inside you, maybe how it's been building up inside you all day or for several days.
Mhm.
Um, it's knocking in your throat, fighting for release, but you've had to keep it pent up to avoid making a scene. So now
Mhm.
you're in a place of safety. You can belch it out at you, and um, I think at one time I used the metaphor, my lungs are vomiting sandpaper,
Mm.
um, which is sometimes how it feels
Yeah,
when you've been stopping yourself from screaming all day, and then you suddenly let it all out.
yeah, yeah. That's very deep, very strong as well, but very true. Very, very true. Yeah. I I can't wait to read more of your work because I can feel the words on the pages, and it's something that's needed so much in this world, in a place where everyone tries to put someone in square grids and think that, oh, just go over there and read this. No, not, you don't understand. You have to be somebody who's been through it in order to write the experiences to help other people navigate through these emotions and these stories. And what I liked mostly about your book was it wasn't just writing um, some made up story. That's somebody's life right there that you're reading on a page. It was a life, and that was the most intriguing part about it.
Mm.
So
Well, it is a made-up story. It's partially autobiographical, in that it has true elements of my life in it and of the community in general.
mhm,
But the actual plot is fictional. For instance, Skylar's dad died 8 years ago. Fortunately, my dad is still alive,
mhm.
um, and the call center where Skylar works is, I'm not ashamed to say, heavily inspired by a call center where I used to work. But keyword there, used to. I saw sense and got out of there.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of the side characters, like Skylar's partners, are completely made up, and
Yeah.
uh, the plot of trying to deal with a new stepfather who refuses to accept them, that's entirely fictional.
Awesome.
But of course, it does reflect what often happens to people in the community.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So other than the new books coming out and figuring this series out and how many more is going to be in it, do you have anything else that you're going to be working on?
Um, Not immediately, no. As I say, I've got to edit the third book, which I've just drafted. I've still got to write a lot of poems for it, because the way I'm structuring it, the series, is each chapter starts with a poem written in universe by Skylar. Of course, actually, it's written by me, but within the context of the book, it's written by Skylar. So I've written all the prose, the main body, but I still need to write most of the chapter heading poems. Yeah, then after that, I'll have to properly plan the fourth book, which I've got a basic idea for, but it needs expanding. On the side, I do write poetry that's unrelated to this series, but that's not very frequent. It's I just write a bit whenever it comes to mind. Um, Often drawing inspiration from, as we mentioned earlier, other poets like Edgar Allan Poe, and my surroundings and experiences. They have a great influence on me. Other than that, no, I'm not doing any other writing at the moment. But I am actually looking for employment again, because I left my job about 8 months ago to focus on my writing.
Mm.
And now that I've started to get things published, I've decided, yeah, I'll try and ease myself back into part-time work and carry on writing alongside it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you had a piece of advice, one, I'm sure you have a million and one, but if you had one piece of advice to give to somebody who's going through either depression or lack of acceptance in their world, in their life, what do you think that piece of advice would be, something that you could impart on them?
I'm not sure I can pick just one most important piece of advice. I think the top two I can think of are: one, don't lose faith in yourself, trust your own feelings and identity. You know yourself better than anyone else knows you. And even if you feel hopeless or invalid, um, always keep the faith in yourself that you are a strong and valid person who deserves love and respect and acceptance, even if no one around you seems to agree. Um, of course, in those kinds of circumstances, it can be hard to keep your belief in yourself. So, as much as you can, surround yourself with people who do love and support and accept you, especially if you're also going through mental struggles, if you're suffering from depression or bipolar disorder or anything similar to that. Um, a lot of the time, it can seem that everyone around you has it in for you, or either hates you or just isn't interested in you. But you may be surprised to find that people do still care about you, and and of course, especially nowadays when we can't meet people properly as we normally would. It can be difficult to reach out to people and say, I'm struggling, I need some support. But you may be surprised that if you take that step, um, how many people will actually be willing to respond to you and support you.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. Um, Along your journey, who was your biggest supporters?
My siblings,
Yeah.
yeah, they're both significantly older than me, and they're some of the first people I told when I started questioning my gender identity. I didn't know what was going on back then. I just knew something was going on. So they were more experienced with this sort of thing than I was, and we sat down together and worked it all out over the course of several months.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm
And they
glad that
also
you had
helped me
them.
to tell my parents.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad that they were there for you because siblings are amazing. I've got two sisters and a brother, and I call my sisters all the time. My brother, he does his own thing, but me and my sisters are very close. If you have any, do you have any shout outs to anybody that you want to say thank you to, for any part of your journey that they have done something amazing for you?
hmm Well, I mentioned earlier my grandfather, who sadly passed away just over a year ago. Um, but yeah, he has been an important influence um, in this series, particularly the third book that I've just drafted. That includes the Skylar's granddad's 80th birthday, where he holds a big family gathering, and unknowingly plays his part in healing a family relationship that Skylar's been struggling with.
Nice.
So yeah, posthumous shout out to my own grandpa. Um, and of course my parents and siblings who have supported me along this journey, and several friends and colleagues, and finally my partner Flynn, um, who whom the first book is dedicated to. Um, he has been amazing with his level of support. Um, Again, he's one of the first people I told about my gender identity before I came out in public.
Oh,
Um, for a surprisingly long time, we were just close friends without ever thinking about the possibility of romance between us. Um, and and then I was the one to say, you know what, it seems like this has been a logical step for a while, but maybe we've left it too late, and we decided to try it, and it worked.
there you go.
Um, yeah, so yeah, he's been amazing with supporting me, and all his family have as well. They're all wonderful, and especially during this time when we've had reduced contact. Um, he's been an invaluable source of support to me, and he's the only person um, I've allowed to see my work in progress. As I've been writing the books, we've been reading them together on video calls, just taking turns reading each paragraph aloud and doing all the characters' voices. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so it can help massively actually to hear someone else say what you've written aloud, and then you can realize that, oh, this sentence is too long and complicated, or it's not clear enough what it's supposed to be saying, or actually I don't think that character would say that. Um, yeah, it's been a great help in the editing process.
That's a great idea. I'm going to have to find me a reading partner. I'm going to have someone read along with me. I might try that. Thank you for the tip, Luna. I'm super excited. You have a beautiful spirit, and it has been such a pleasure talking to you tonight and learning about the journey that you have been on. Reading the book that you wrote, I know that I'm going to read many, many more of your works. I see them reaching a lot of heights, reaching a lot of people as well. There is such a gap in the space of books along the genre of including the LGBT plus community from people who are in the community and have lived the experience. Please never stop writing. Please always bring that beautiful spirit to the literary world, because I thoroughly enjoyed and being able to write, um, to emote those feelings from your words and bring us into your world is a wonderful talent. And I can't wait to see so much more work that you're going to bring to the table. One last thing before we go, can you let everyone know? We have everything in the show notes, but if you could just let them know verbally how they can get in touch with you if they want to either have you on the show, read your books, or ask you any questions as an author.
Hmm. Yes, so I have a Facebook page which is called Luna Tibling Author, and also I'm on Instagram as luna.tibling. Um, you can find my author page on Amazon as well under my pen name Luna Tibling. You can find that with any of the links in the description. And also, if you find any of the books, How I Found Myself or How I Found Ariana in the series Beyond the Binary, they'll say by Luna Tibling, and you can find the author page from there. Um, and also on my Facebook page, there's a link to my email address, my author email
Mhm.
address, that you can where you can send me a message if you'd like to get in touch and organize anything.
Awesome. Do you have any parting words before we end tonight and let you go to sleep, since I've already kept you up for 40 minutes?
Yeah, pursue your dreams as I've done it. It took me a long time to push myself to do it, because I'd had a passion for writing for several years, but it took me until nearly a year ago to actually take the step to devote my time to writing and get my work published. So yeah, there's no rush. However much time you need to take, whatever support you need, um, just do whatever you need to do to follow your dreams and be who you are. Um, Whoever you are lovely and valid and worthy of love and respect, even if no one else seems to think so. And if that's the case, reach out to someone whom you can trust and rely on.
Amen. I love that. Absolutely love that. Luna, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for staying up till 1 a.m. and beyond to speak with us today here in the United States, all the way from the UK, everybody. Author Luna Tibling, Beyond the Binary series, a wonderful series of books you definitely want to read. You want to delve in there and understand so many different things that you probably never even thought of before, unless you are living a non binary life. We'll be back here on the Author's Porch Thursday. The Bombshell Book Reviews. Flight to Love is the book we are reviewing for the month of April. And next week, everyone, we will be interviewing another author. Once again, Luna, your beautiful spirit, don't forget to keep us in a loop every time you're releasing a new book. We like to add all of our authors' books to our newsletter that goes out to a lot of people so we can make sure we get your word and your mission out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. We'll see you guys later on this week. Bye. Bye, Luna.
Bye.